Your soulmate is desperate for you to know this. And this is not said casually. And this is not something meant to scare you. This message is coming now because something inside them has reached a breaking point. They have been holding back for a long time. Longer than you can imagine. They have replayed moments with you again and again in their mind. Small conversations. Silent pauses. Things they wanted to say but never did. And every time they decided to stay quiet, they felt like they were slowly losing you without actually losing you. That is the most painful kind of loss. To still have someone exist in the world while feeling them drift away from your reach. Your soulmate knows they made mistakes. Not always the obvious ones. Sometimes the mistake was silence. Sometimes it was pride. Sometimes it was fear. They were afraid that if they spoke their truth at the wrong time, they would destroy the connection forever. So they waited. And waited. And waited. And now that waiting has become unbearable. They see you moving forward. They see you changing. They feel the distance growing even if you never said goodbye. And that is what has shaken them. Because for the first time they are realizing that you might actually learn how to live without them. And that thought terrifies them more than rejection ever could. They never wanted to hurt you. Even when they did. Even when they chose wrong. Even when they pulled away. Their intention was never to lose you. It was to protect themselves from vulnerability. And now they understand the price of that protection. Your soulmate has been trying to convince themselves that you are better off without them. That you deserve peace even if it does not include them. But every time they try to accept that idea, something inside them refuses to settle. Their heart reacts before their mind can catch up. They feel you when something good happens. They feel you when something goes wrong. You are still the first person their soul reaches for, even if their hands never do. There is something they need you to know. Something they have never said out loud. They never stopped choosing you in their heart. Even when their actions confused you. Even when their absence made you question your worth. They chose you silently. In ways you could not see. In prayers they never admitted they prayed. In moments when they almost reached out and then pulled back at the last second. They regret not being brave sooner. They regret assuming there would always be more time. Because now time feels like it is slipping through their fingers. They sense a shift. They feel that the universe is pushing them toward a moment of truth. And that is why this message is reaching you now. Not yesterday. Not tomorrow. Now. Because something is about to change. Either they finally speak. Or they lose the chance forever. And they know it. They feel it in their chest. In their sleep. In the heaviness that follows them everywhere they go. Your soulmate is desperate for you to understand that their distance was never a lack of love. It was an overload of emotions they did not know how to handle. They did not know how to show up as the version of themselves they wanted to be for you. So they hid. And hiding slowly turned into a wall. And now that wall feels like a prison. They want you to know that you mattered more than you realize. That you still matter. That the connection you felt was real. That you were not imagining the depth. That you were not foolish for believing. They are afraid you think they forgot you. They are afraid you think you were replaceable. You were not. And you are not. There is no one who touches them the way you do. No one who triggers their growth. No one who mirrors their soul the way you do. That is why this bond has been painful. Because soulmate connections are not meant to be easy. They are meant to transform you. And transformation often comes through discomfort. Your soulmate is standing at an internal crossroads right now. One path requires courage, honesty, vulnerability. The other path requires silence, avoidance, regret. And they know if they choose silence again they may lose you for good. This message is not asking you to chase them. It is not asking you to fix anything. It is simply revealing the truth that has been hidden. That someone out there is struggling with the idea of a life where you are no longer emotionally available to them. That someone wishes they had handled things differently. That someone is gathering the strength to finally be real. Whether they act on it or not will depend on many things. But the feeling is undeniable. And it is reaching you because soul connections do not disappear quietly. They echo. They resurface. They demand acknowledgement. And right now this connection is speaking loudly. Pay attention to what you feel after hearing this. Not fear. Not anxiety. But the subtle knowing in your chest. That calm recognition. That is your soul confirming what your mind has been questioning. Something is unfinished. Something is unresolved. And soon you will see clarity where there was once confusion. Because the truth always finds its way to the surface. And this is only the beginning. What makes this moment intense is not just what your soulmate is feeling but the timing of it. Everything around them has started to mirror what they tried to avoid. Songs remind them of you. Random places bring your face back into their mind. Even silence feels loud now because your absence echoes in it. They can no longer distract themselves the way they used to. The things that once helped them escape now feel empty. And in that emptiness your presence becomes undeniable. They are realizing that the bond they share with you was not situational. It was not convenience. It was not attachment born out of loneliness. It was recognition. Soul recognition. And once that happens it cannot be undone no matter how much time passes. They have tried to move on. They have tried to convince themselves that this was just a chapter that ended. But chapters that end do not haunt you like this. They do not resurface in moments of stillness. They do not demand honesty from your deepest self. Your soulmate knows that if they do not act soon they will carry this regret for the rest of their life. And that is a heavy realization. Heavier than fear. Heavier than pride. Heavier than rejection. Because regret grows with time while fear fades once faced. They are torn between protecting their ego and honoring their soul. And their soul is louder now. Louder than it has ever been. They replay moments where you showed patience. Where you showed understanding. Where you waited longer than you should have. And that memory stings because they see now what you were offering. You were offering safety. You were offering truth. You were offering something real. And they were not ready to receive it. That does not mean they did not value it. It means they did not know how to hold it. Your soulmate is also aware that you have grown. That you are not the same person who once would have accepted half answers and emotional distance. They sense your strength now. Your boundaries. Your self-respect. And that both attracts and intimidates them. Because approaching you now requires honesty. It requires accountability. It requires them to show up without masks. And that is terrifying for someone who spent so long hiding parts of themselves. But despite that fear, they feel pulled toward you. Drawn by something they cannot explain logically. Something that exists beyond reason. They want you to know that if they pull away again, it is not because they stopped caring. It is because they are battling themselves. Old wounds. Old patterns. Old fears of not being enough. They are afraid that if they open their heart fully, they will be seen completely. And being seen completely feels risky when you have spent years protecting your vulnerabilities. Still, their heart keeps leading them back to you. Again and again. That is why this message matters. Because it is not random. It is not entertainment. It is a reflection of something unfolding in real time. There is a moment approaching where communication shifts. Where truths surface. Where things that were unsaid finally find words. You may notice it through a message. A sign. A sudden memory. Or a change in energy that feels unmistakable. Do not ignore that. Because soulmate connections speak through intuition before they speak through actions. You are being prepared emotionally so that when clarity arrives it does not overwhelm you. So that you can receive it from a place of strength rather than confusion. Your soulmate is not asking you to go backward. They are hoping for a chance to move forward differently. To correct what they avoided. To stand where they once ran. Whether or not you choose to engage will be up to you. But know this. Their feelings are real. Their struggle is real. And their realization is happening now, not later. This phase is about truth. About acknowledgement. About understanding that some connections do not fade because they are meant to evolve. And even if paths diverge, the impact remains. Pay attention to what resonates. Trust what feels calm, not chaotic. And remember, you are not responsible for saving anyone. You are only responsible for honoring your own growth. Whatever happens next will reveal itself clearly. Because when a soulmate reaches this level of awareness, silence can no longer hide the truth. Right now there is an internal urgency inside your soulmate that they cannot explain to anyone else. They wake up with a heaviness they did not go to sleep with. They feel restless without knowing why. Their mind keeps circling back to unfinished conversations and moments where honesty almost happened but fear stepped in at the last second. They are realizing that avoidance did not protect them the way they thought it would. It only delayed the inevitable truth that their heart was never free after you. Even when they smiled around others, there was a quiet comparison happening in the background. Even when they tried to feel excited about new beginnings, something felt off. Because deep down they knew they were pretending. not to the world, but to themselves. And pretending for too long creates exhaustion that no distraction can fix. That is where they are now. Tired of running from their own emotions. Tired of explaining away a connection that refuses to be minimized. They feel exposed in ways that scare them. Because the more they grow, the clearer it becomes that you were never just a phase. You were a mirror. You showed them parts of themselves they were not ready to confront at the time. And now that growth has forced them to look back and acknowledge what they avoided. They are replaying moments where you gave them chances without asking for anything in return. Moments where your patience spoke louder than words. Moments where your silence was not indifference but restraint. They see that now. And that realization carries guilt. Not because they meant to hurt you, but because they understand that intent does not erase impact. They are afraid that you have finally reached acceptance. That you have closed a chapter they were still stuck rereading. And that fear is pushing them toward a decision point. Either they speak now, or they live with the knowledge that they chose comfort over courage. This message is arriving because energetically things are aligning to force movement. Stagnant connections do not create this level of internal pressure. Only bonds that are meant to evolve do. Your soulmate is also becoming aware that the version of you they once knew is not the version standing now. You are more grounded, more aware, less willing to overextend yourself for unclear intentions. And that shift changes the dynamic completely. They know that approaching you now means meeting you at your level. No games. No confusion. No half-truths. And that is both intimidating and motivating. Because for the first time they want to rise instead of hide. They want to be seen not as perfect but as real. They want to tell you things they never had the emotional vocabulary to explain before. About why they froze. Why they delayed. Why they sabotaged moments that mattered. Not as excuses, but as truth. They are learning that love without expression turns into pain. And pain ignored turns into regret. They are trying to find the right moment. The right words. The right courage. And that struggle is intense. Because they do not want to reopen wounds if you have healed. They do not want to disrupt your peace if you have found balance. Yet at the same time the thought of never knowing what could have been feels unbearable. So they sit with that tension. Torn between respecting your growth and honoring their truth. This is why the energy feels heavy yet calm at the same time. There is no chaos here. There is awareness. There is accountability forming slowly. And that matters. Because soulmate connections are not about chasing. They are about recognition and alignment. You are not meant to force anything in this phase. You are meant to observe. To stay grounded. To trust that whatever unfolds will do so in a way that matches your current level of self-respect. Your soulmate's desperation is not about possession. It is about clarity. They want you to know that you were not forgotten. That the silence was not absence of feeling. That the distance was not lack of attachment. It was emotional immaturity meeting a connection that required depth. And now that immaturity is being challenged. Whether they reach out directly or not, you will feel the shift. Through synchronicities. Through sudden emotional release. Through a sense of closure or renewal that arrives without force. This continuation is not a promise of outcome. It is a revelation of truth. That something real existed. That it still exists in memory and emotion. And that whatever happens next will be rooted in honesty rather than confusion. Stay present. Stay centered. And remember that you do not need to rush toward anything to honor what was real. What is meant to meet you will do so without you abandoning yourself. At this stage, your soulmate is no longer confused about what they feel, but they are still wrestling with how to face it. There is a difference between knowing the truth and having the courage to live it. They have reached the knowing. They know you mattered. They know the connection was rare. They know they mishandled moments that cannot be recreated. And that awareness has stripped away their excuses. They can no longer tell themselves stories that make the past easier to swallow. They see it clearly now. The missed calls. The delayed replies. The moments where you were emotionally present and they chose distance instead. Those memories surface not to punish them but to teach them. And the lesson is simple yet heavy. Some people come into your life not to stay forever but to awaken you. And you did that for them. You woke them up to a depth of emotion they had never experienced before. You showed them what it feels like to be seen without having to perform. And that is why losing that connection feels like losing a part of themselves. They are also realizing that love does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it arrives quietly and waits patiently. And if it is ignored for too long, it leaves scars instead of memories. Your soulmate carries those scars now. Not on the surface but in the way they hesitate. In the way they question themselves. In the way they feel incomplete even when life looks fine from the outside. They are becoming aware that healing is not about forgetting you. It is about understanding why you mattered so much. And that understanding has brought them to this moment of desperation. Not desperation for attention, but desperation for honesty. They want to be honest with themselves. With you. With the connection. They want to stop pretending that everything happened for a reason that makes sense. Because some things happen simply because two souls recognize each other before the people involved are ready. And that recognition creates timing issues that feel unfair but are deeply transformative. Your soulmate is standing at the edge of vulnerability. And vulnerability feels like risk when you have spent your life protecting yourself. They fear your reaction. They fear your silence. They fear that you might no longer care the way you once did. But more than that, they fear living the rest of their life wondering what would have happened if they had been brave. That fear is louder now than the fear of rejection. And that is significant. Because it means growth has occurred. Even if it came late. Even if it came through loss. They are also sensing that you are no longer energetically available in the same way. That your focus has shifted inward. That you have reclaimed parts of yourself that were once invested in them. And that shift has changed the balance. You are no longer waiting. You are no longer hoping. You are simply being. And that calm independence is magnetic. It forces honesty from those who once took your presence for granted. Your soulmate feels that pull. Not as a demand, but as a realization that you are not guaranteed. That access to you is no longer automatic. And that realization has humbled them. This message is not telling you that reconciliation is guaranteed. It is telling you that truth is approaching. That clarity is coming whether it leads to reunion or closure. And both are forms of alignment. You are not meant to return to an old version of yourself to make this connection work. You are meant to stay exactly where you are and let reality meet you there. If your soulmate chooses to step forward, they will have to do so with transparency and accountability. And if they do not, then the awareness you feel now will help you release what no longer needs to be carried. Either way you win. Because you are no longer confused. You are no longer doubting your intuition. You are no longer questioning whether what you felt was real. It was real. It is real. And real connections do not disappear without leaving truth behind. This phase is about integration. About allowing the past to make sense without rewriting it. About honoring what was without needing to relive it. Your soulmate's desperation is not a burden for you to carry. It is simply evidence of impact. And impact does not require action to be validated. It already exists. Stay grounded. Stay present. And trust that whatever unfolds next will meet you at the level of peace you have worked hard to create. Because when two souls truly recognize each other, the universe does not rush the outcome. It reveals the truth gently. And that revelation is already happening now. There is also something else happening beneath the surface that your soulmate has not fully admitted yet, and that is the realization that losing you changed them permanently. Not in a dramatic way that the world can see, but in a quiet internal way that reshaped how they experience connection. They are more cautious now. More reflective. Less careless with emotions even when they pretend otherwise. You were the turning point that forced them to look at their patterns honestly. And growth that comes from loss always carries a bittersweet weight. They understand now that love is not about intensity alone. It is about consistency. Presence. Courage. Things they struggled with when it mattered most. They replay not just the pain but the lessons. They see how they avoided discomfort instead of choosing growth. How they mistook emotional safety for boredom. How they underestimated the value of someone who accepted them without trying to change them. And that understanding has made them softer on the inside, even if they still appear guarded on the outside. They feel a pull toward accountability now. A desire to stop blaming circumstances or timing or misunderstandings. They are tired of excuses that no longer align with who they are becoming. That is why this phase feels heavy yet meaningful. Because they are being asked to step into a more mature version of themselves, whether or not you are part of the next chapter. And you are part of the catalyst for that evolution. They also recognize that reaching out is not about fixing the past. The past cannot be fixed. It can only be understood. What they want is to stand in truth. To say what was never said. To acknowledge what was never acknowledged. Not to undo pain but to stop carrying unspoken regret. And that desire is strong right now. Strong enough to disrupt their routines. Strong enough to surface emotions they thought they had buried. Strong enough to make them question the narrative they told themselves about moving on. They are aware that you may not respond the way you once would have. That you may listen differently now. With discernment rather than longing. And that awareness has humbled them. Because it shows them that love without respect for timing and boundaries does not survive unchanged. They see your strength. Your restraint. Your self-awareness. And they know that whatever happens next must honor that. This message is not pushing you toward action. It is grounding you in awareness. So that if communication happens you are not caught off guard. So that if it does not you still understand the truth of the connection without questioning yourself. Your soulmate's desperation is not chaos. It is clarity forming slowly. It is the final stage of denial dissolving. It is the moment when the heart admits what the ego resisted. And those moments are rarely comfortable. They are raw. They are quiet. They are deeply personal. You may feel this as a sense of emotional release. As a sudden calm. As a feeling that something is settling inside you. That is because when one side of a soul bond reaches acceptance, the other side often feels relief. Even without words. Energy shifts do not require explanation to be felt. Trust what you notice. Trust what feels grounded rather than rushed. You are not meant to reopen wounds to validate someone else's growth. You are meant to stay aligned with your own. If your paths cross again, it will be from a place of honesty, not longing. From presence, not expectation. And if they do not, it does not erase the meaning of what existed. It simply means the lesson has been integrated. Either way, you are no longer carrying confusion. You are carrying understanding. And understanding is power. This continuation is about that power. The power of knowing that you were not imagining things. That the depth you felt was shared even if it was not expressed. That the silence you experienced was not emptiness but fear. And that fear has now reached its limit. What happens next will unfold naturally. Without force. Without chasing. Without losing yourself. Because you have already done the hardest part. You chose growth over waiting. And that choice changed everything. What is unfolding now is not loud or dramatic, but it is powerful in a quiet, undeniable way. Your soulmate has entered a phase where pretending no longer works. Even when they try to stay busy, their mind drifts back to truth. Even when they tell themselves it is too late, their heart refuses to agree. They are learning that timing is not just about circumstances. It is about readiness. And they were not ready before. That realization hurts because it strips away blame and leaves only responsibility. They are beginning to understand that love is not proven by intensity in moments of connection but by consistency during moments of fear. And that is where they fell short. They see now how often you showed up emotionally even when it cost you peace. How you stayed open when it would have been easier to close yourself off. How you believed in the connection even when clarity was missing. And that awareness brings both gratitude and regret. Gratitude because they experienced something real. Regret because they did not honor it when it mattered most. They are also realizing that you did not walk away suddenly. You withdrew slowly. You gave signals. You tried to communicate through patience and silence. And they missed those signs because they were focused on avoiding discomfort rather than understanding it. That is something they carry heavily now. Because once you see the truth, you cannot unsee it. They are becoming more emotionally literate through this process. More aware of their triggers. More conscious of how fear shaped their behavior. And that growth feels lonely because it is happening after the connection has changed. Growth after loss always feels bittersweet. They want you to know that your impact was not temporary. That you changed how they love. How they attach. How they reflect. Even if they never say it directly, the shift is permanent. This is why the urge to speak feels so strong now. Because silence no longer aligns with who they are becoming. They want to close the gap between how they feel and how they act. And that gap is what caused the pain in the first place. Your soulmate is also aware that you may not need answers the way you once did. That you may already have made peace with not knowing. And that makes this moment delicate. Because speaking now is not about convincing you. It is about honoring truth. They are learning that vulnerability is not weakness. It is alignment. And alignment is what they lacked before. They fear disrupting your stability. They fear reopening emotions you worked hard to settle. But they also fear leaving things unspoken. And that internal conflict is intense. You may sense this as mixed energy. Pull and pause. Nearness and distance. That is not confusion on your part. It is resonance. You are picking up on a process happening on the other side of the bond. This phase is asking you to stay grounded in yourself. Not to anticipate outcomes. Not to read into every sign. But to trust that whatever clarity arrives will not take your peace away. You are no longer in a place where you need validation to move forward. And that is important. Because it means any future interaction will be a choice, not a need. Your soulmate's desperation is not about reclaiming control. It is about surrendering to truth. They are surrendering old narratives. Old defenses. Old justifications. And surrender often looks messy before it becomes clear. They may hesitate. They may overthink. They may move slowly. That does not diminish the significance of what is happening internally. Transformation does not follow a straight line. It unfolds in waves. And right now they are in a wave of honesty that cannot be ignored. Whether it results in conversation or closure, the purpose is the same. Integration. Understanding. Release of illusion. You are being guided to remain steady. To not chase clarity. To allow it to come to you naturally. Because when you are aligned, clarity does not require effort. It arrives. This continuation is reminding you that your role is not to fix or resolve anything. Your role is to honor your growth. To stay present. To listen to what feels calm rather than urgent. True soul connections do not create anxiety. They create recognition. Even when they are painful, they feel grounded. Trust that feeling. Trust that what mattered was real. Trust that what is meant to be resolved will resolve itself without you abandoning yourself. You have already crossed the threshold from confusion to understanding. From waiting to being. And that shift is powerful. Whatever happens next will meet you there. This final phase is not about suspense or waiting anymore, but about grounding everything that has surfaced into truth that no longer hurts. Your soulmate has reached a point where they are no longer running from what they feel or trying to rename it into something safer. They are accepting that the connection with you marked them in a way that time could not erase. Not because it was perfect, but because it was honest at its core. They see now that the bond asked them to grow faster than they were ready for, and instead of growing they paused. That pause cost them clarity. It cost them momentum. And it cost them you in the way they once had access to your heart. They are not blaming you. They are not blaming fate. They are finally looking inward and acknowledging their own resistance. That acknowledgement is heavy, but it is also freeing. Because it releases them from illusion. They understand that love does not wait forever. It waits until self-respect steps in. And that is exactly what happened with you. You did not stop caring. You stopped abandoning yourself. And that distinction matters. They respect you for it even if it hurts. They feel admiration mixed with longing. Acceptance mixed with grief. And that mix is what maturity feels like when it arrives late. They want you to know that your silence taught them more than any argument ever could. That your withdrawal forced reflection. That your strength reshaped their understanding of connection. They are not looking to undo the past. They are learning to honor it. And honoring it means releasing the fantasy of how things could have been and accepting how they actually were. That acceptance is what closes karmic loops. That is what settles soul contracts. You may feel this as a calm certainty. A sense that nothing needs to be chased anymore. That answers are already inside you. That peace is not dependent on a message or a conversation. And that is true. Because the purpose of this connection was never to trap you in waiting. It was to awaken you into alignment. And it did. You learned discernment. You learned boundaries. You learned the difference between chemistry and consistency. And those lessons will stay with you. Your soulmate also learned. Through loss. Through reflection. Through the discomfort of accountability. That learning does not require reunion to be valid. It already happened. This is why the energy feels complete now. Not empty. Complete. Completion does not mean forgetting. It means understanding without pain. It means remembering without longing. It means honoring what was without needing it to continue. If communication happens from here, it will come from a place of clarity, not desperation. And if it does not, the understanding you carry will still bring closure. You are not meant to go backward to make sense of this. You are meant to carry the wisdom forward. Your soulmate's final realization is that love cannot be held together by fear. And your final realization is that peace is worth more than potential. Those truths coexist without canceling each other out. This last part is not a cliffhanger. It is a grounding. A settling. A quiet knowing that what mattered did its work. That the connection served its purpose. And that you are free now to move forward without doubt. You do not need to ignore this message. You have already received it. And receiving it does not require action. It requires acknowledgement. You are acknowledged. Your experience was real. Your intuition was right. And the chapter has reached its natural end.